Today we are diving into my favorite, growing chilies and peppers from seed all the way to harvest. And we're even going to talk about how to preserve them and also how to overwinter them so they come back stronger for the following season. So every pepper plant has its own story, and it all starts with a dry, small seed. It being a chili plant or a pepper plant, the growing way is all the same. So let's get into it. You want to sow your seeds in a fine seed compost, about 1 centimeter deep. You want to keep them warm, around about 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, and I think it's about 77 to 80 Fahrenheit. I think that's the conversion, because peppers love heat to germinate, and in the right warmth they'll sprout in about 1 to 3 weeks depending on the variety. So the seeds that I grow is seeds that I have gone and harvest from my own chilies or pepper plants. So I do that with only a handful of chili seeds. Over here you can see this is my jalapeno. So at the homestead there is only a handful that I will grow because I love preserving them. That would be the Acha lemon. It is a mild chili. It is very citrus. I love the flavor, and you can actually use it in a lot of things. Not only do I dry it out and make chili flakes and chili powder, I preserve it in vinegar. I make my own brine, and that lasts me probably about a year depending on how much I eat. But it's always nice to just go and grab some. It's basically pickling your own chilies. Then I also will pickle my jalapenos. The jalapeno seeds will come from my jalapeno plants. I also got things like a pepperdew. I'm not really sure what the right term of a pepperdew plant is called, but here in South Africa I call it a pepperdew plant. It's a little round pepper, about that round. It's got a bit of a bite to it, so I would say between a mild heat. And I like to make things like a picante pepperdew, which we have in South Africa, that is quite an expensive thing to buy here. It's about 76 Rand a jar, but I make my own. I make about 7 to 8 jars, and that lasts us just under a year. I think, well, it's been about a year nearly, and we are on our last jar, and I made about 7 jars. It depends on how much pepperdews I get from the plant. And I think I had about 3 big plants. So what I do is that I overwinter my peppers and my chilies, and we'll go into that a little bit later, so don't go away. And we will go through that process where you'll be able to keep your chili and your pepper plants for the following season without growing a new plant. But in my case, besides having the plants that I do have that I've overwintered, I also make sure that I've got new fresh plants. So you'll see over here that I've got a new jalapeno. I've actually got a few jalapenos. So you see that's a little bit bigger, and this one's a little bit smaller. They're both jalapenos. Then I think I have about 2 jalapenos in the garden that we'll go and check later. And then I was talking to you about these pepperdew plants. So I have 3 here, and these are the pepperdews that I actually grew from seed this year. So what happens then? You'll have this beautiful little baby seedling start popping up, and you need to wait until these have their true leaves. Then you can take them and put them in pots. So you want to keep your seedlings in a light, bright, warm area, and once they're about 8 to 10 weeks, they are then ready to be transplanted into a bigger pot. When this is done, you can either move them indoors, you can put them in your greenhouse, or you can put it in your garden where you know that it's going to get enough warmth in order for it to grow a little bit bigger. When it starts warming outside, you can then take your plants out, and you want to make sure that you feed it regularly, you water it regularly. Make sure that the soil is dry before giving it its next water, because you don't want that soil too soggy. And also remember that too much nitrogen will make more leaves and less fruit. And then between 90 to 120 days, you'll start seeing it fruit, depending on what variety you are growing. And remember that chilies take a little bit longer than your bell peppers. So when it actually starts to show little either white or pink flowers, depending on what variety you are growing, these small little flowers are potential chilies or bell peppers. And once they are pollinated and start growing into the fruits, that is where the magic happens. You'll start seeing your chilies or your bell peppers or whatever variety of peppers you are growing start sizing up. And once they are at a mature level to actually harvest, then that is the fun part. So how do you know when your chilies or your peppers are ready to harvest? Well, depending on your variety, as I said, if I'm growing an achi lemon, they'll all start green. Majority of your fruits will start green. And then if you know that you're going to have a yellow chili, the green starts turning a little bit shade of yellow, and then from yellow, a bright yellow. That's when you know it's time to harvest. And then with your bell peppers and that, bell peppers are nice and green when they start, then they start changing color. If you want a green pepper, you will then harvest that when it's green. But once it starts changing a different color, that's when the taste also starts changing. So this is basically a cheat way. What I did, I took one pot, and all of these seedlings had their true leaves, and I put 3 in one pot. But as you saw in that other pot, they're a little bit bigger. They all have different growth spurts. That's because they're competing in one pot. So now my job is to take each one of them and put them in their own pot so they can start thickening their stems and growing. And this is exactly what I have to do with these guys. I've just done this, so I'll just wait for them to get a little bit stronger, then take them out and put them in their individual pots. These 3 plants are my achi lemon chilies, and I've shown you in the past how beautiful they look. This is how they are, and it's one of my favorite chilies in the whole entire world. So I've been growing these guys for the last 4 years, and they are always part of the homestead. So these are 3 new plants, and I think I've got some others growing somewhere else. Here we've got a beautiful Pepperdew plant. So this is one that I overwintered from last year. It's a small one, and it is full of leaves. So this can now go and sit in the sun. It needs some sun. If this rainy weather will stop, then here is another one we overwintered. So you can see they were young. So last year I didn't have luck with my new seedlings. These were the new seedlings from last year. You can see how small they are. But once I put new soil in here, some fertilizer, they'll start growing and giving us amazing fruits. So my tag is not in here. I'm not sure which fruit this is, but when it starts giving me the chili or the pepper, I'll be able to identify it. And then this is a 2-year-old one. 2-year-old one. This is 2 years old, and we overwintered this, and it is starting to come back. You can see the new branch over there. So that's 2 years old. Okay, this is the Pepperdew. Starting to get some new leaves. They're all starting to wake up now, which is an awesome sign. And this, I think, is 2 or 3 years. So, and then I've got another one. This is about 2 years. It's a Jalapeño. So all of this we overwintered, and the plants are starting to come back. They're looking amazing. So let's go and see the older varieties, and then what do we do next? Over here we've got two of the older varieties of our peppers. And this one is our Pepperdew plant, as well as this. So in our last video on our Pepperdews, you'll see how massive this plant was. It was massive, as well as this. We had this growing in the herb box, and this one growing on the other side of the homestead, and it gave us so much Pepperdews. These two plants gave us nearly 7 jars of Pepperdews, and you can see they're starting to come back. But as I said, we'll talk about overwintering your peppers at a later stage. I just wanted to show you the different stages that we have in the garden. And then let's just talk about, something went in my eye. Oh, okay, so let's talk about preserving. So once you go and harvest all your chilies and your peppers, just say you have a really good season and you have an abundance of chilies and peppers, you can only eat as much as you possibly can. Then you just have all of these peppers and chilies. What do you do with them? Well, the best thing about peppers and chilies is that you can preserve them in so many different ways. And there's a few ways that we actually love to do. So with your peppers, if they go a red color, then I dry them out and then I ground them into a fine powder. And that is perfect to put in your mince sauces like spaghetti bolognese, or even if you're making like something with beef. That is such a beautiful peppery taste that actually enhances your dish. So give that a bash. All you do is you will dry out your slices of peppers, which I put it in a dehydrator, let that dry out, and once it is very, very dry, I put it in a blender, which will then turn that into very fine powder. I jar it up, and that can actually stay for many, many years in that sealed container. Now, when it comes to chilies, that's a whole different thing. I make so many different varieties of preserving. I preserve my chilies in so many different ways. So the first way is obviously drying them out, totally dry, and then putting it in a bottle, a good sealed bottle, so that there's no moisture, that there's nothing like mold that can grow onto your chilies. And then here's another flower. I don't understand. Okay, take 2. So that is one way I preserve my chilies. I dry them out and I put them in a nice sealed container. Or I will make chili flakes, which is my favorite. You just basically won't make it into a powder, but into like chili flakes. So you can actually put it in something like a pesto mortar, bash it, and then put it in a jar. Or you can put it in a blender, and instead of the blender going and making it into a fine powder, you just zest it, and it will give you bits of chili flakes, and I preserve that. I also like to make the chili powders, and my favorite is pickling my chilies. I love pickling my chilies. It lasts for about a year, and I'll make about 2 to 3 jars of pickled chilies, where I will have maybe a spaghetti bolognese and I want some chilies. I'll just go and grab 2 chilies from there and dice it up in my food. My best out of all of them is taking my Pepperdews and making picanto Pepperdews. We make at least 7 jars. This year I need to make more, because this one is the last jar from 7 jars that I've done. And I make my own brine. I put my own stuff in it basically. The only thing I think I bought was the vinegar and the sugar. But everything else in here I grew from home, even the ginger. And yeah, there's a ginger piece in there that you can see. That is from the garden that we harvest. So, wow. And the minute I did that, it released the pressure. Smells so nice. All these bubbles. You see there's bubbles coming up. That's the fermentation. Now that I've opened the jar. And I'm just going to quickly still one there. It is probably one of the best things you can actually make. This is the last jar. It's been sitting on the shelf for about 10 months now. It's the 7th jar. And from all the other jars, I can taste the difference. The brown tastes different because it's been fermenting a little bit longer on the shelf. Now I put it in the fridge and I've just opened it now. And I can see, you see all these bubbles, you can see them rising there. That's the fermentation. The Pepperdew tastes exactly the same. It's sweet and it's got a hint of a bite. Not bad. It's actually very, very sweet. So go check out that YouTube video where I actually make the picanto Pepperdews, and I basically preserve it all like this from the start, from scratch. And Pepperdews are also very nice to dry out and then grind it and throw it over food. So drying and bottling things up is the best way to preserve your chilies and your peppers. Another way that some people do preserve their chilies and their peppers is freezing them. That is not one of my favorite ways, but if you want to freeze them, the best way to freeze them is whole. So you want to actually have that whole, and then once it comes to actually putting in food, take your frozen chili and grate it into your food, and that will not go to waste at all. So here is a nice, beautiful green pepper, bell pepper plant. You can see if we go a little bit closer, right in the middle there, you've got little buds that will flower soon, and these are your potential bell peppers. You can see this is actually a very nice, healthy one, and it's nice to have different varieties of peppers and chilies in your garden. So as summer ends, autumn kicks in, and that's when your plant will start slowing down. Doesn't mean that your whole plant will die like some of your crops in the garden, like zucchinis and some tomatoes that you'll have to just pull out. With peppers and chilies, you are able to overwinter your plant. So what you want to do is that I go and take the whole plant out, I put it in pots, and then I cut it halfway down. I then go and put them in a warmer area. It be your greenhouse, indoors, or somewhere the frost will not get to it. And then you want to water it less because they're resting. They don't need that water, but you don't want their roots to dry out. So just water them sparingly, maybe once a week, but just check your soil because it could be a very cold, wet winter by you, which means that the soil dries out slower. So you don't want to go and water it when the soil is still wet. So just check your soil before you water it, but make sure that these roots do not dry out. And then you just let it rest. And then spring arrives and your overwintered plants will start waking up. You'll see new growth on it. And what you want to do at this stage is make sure that you give it fresh compost and just watch it grow. Make sure you water it now more regularly, and you'll start seeing that beautiful new growth will start coming. At this stage, you'll already be putting your new seeds in to start your new crops, and you'll be able to have these different stages of your chilies and your peppers. So while your overwintered peppers are getting that extra boost of fertilizer and compost and just soaking it up to start its new journey for the new season, that will push out fruits faster than your new plants that you are busy seeding up. So the stages of having different aged peppers and chilies really help, because you get a head start with your overwintered plants. And that is what's happening now. We're in late spring. Summer starting is literally around the corner, and I can see all my overwintered peppers and chilies starting to wake up, and the sounds are absolutely beautiful. So the next step is obviously summer, where my peppers and my chilies will start giving me buds and flowering, and that is where my fruit production will start. So you can see over here, these are my two oldest plants at the homestead. Unfortunately, there were some that I did overwinter and they've not made it. But these two are my Pepperdews. They are my price plants. And then I showed you earlier on the year ones and the year twos. These are, I think, about 3 years old. So I've got 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds, and last year's one. And then I've got new seedlings that I've basically done now that needs to go into their separate pots. So having these different stages really benefits us. So you can see the beautiful growth on these overwintered plants. And what's going to happen after I have gone and harvest all my fruits, the cycle basically will start again, where the growth will start slowing down, the plant will then go and rest, and we wait until spring again, and we just repeat the cycle. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely enjoy this next video, where we talk about our fig trees going to sleep for winter and what we did in order for it to wake up and produce the massive production they gave us this season. So we'll see you in that video.